So thank you to my colleagues who are standing here and who are in the caucus. We will continue to fight. But we wanted today to highlight some of the important wins that we had as a collective. And so first, I'm going to call upon Senator Serrano to highlight some of these important wins.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair Solages, for your tremendous work and leadership, and to all of my colleagues in the caucus for their many, many years of leadership as it pertains to the communities that we represent, ensuring that the budget is reflective upon those needs. And as was mentioned, and in particular, the people's budget and how that affects the everyday lives of folks in communities like the ones I represent in the South Bronx and in East Harlem. And it's so important that we not lose sight when you have a very long, protracted budget process, that there are so many different moving parts and so much at play. And thankful to this caucus for being laser focused on ensuring that the issues and priorities that affect, in many ways, the most vulnerable in the state of New York did not fall off the table, did not fall by the wayside, because we certainly cannot afford to do that. This budget should be a spending plan that uplifts our communities, that ensures that seniors and students and those living in public housing and all of the different necessities that need to be attained are there. In particular, as chair of the Committee on Arts and Culture and Parks, I was very happy to see that we were able to restore funding to previous year's budget and actually increase in aid to localities funding for arts organizations. Why is this so important? When you consider what the arts can do in communities like the South Bronx and East Harlem, where they are completely transformative, where the arts have been a vehicle for social justice and discussion on issues that oftentimes were too thorny for anyone else to deal with, the arts have been at the forefront on ensuring equality and diversity and making sure we have a voice as a community. So funding the arts is certainly all of the things that we think about when we consider the aesthetics of the arts, but it's far more deeper than that, and it empowers our community. So I was so happy to see additional funding for the arts, additional capital for the arts. I also chair the Committee on Parks, and it's part of the same committee, but parks are also a place that we found during the pandemic was our refuge. It was our safe space. It was something that we realized we cannot have a functional society without it. So I'm so grateful again to my colleagues here behind me who did so much work in both houses of the legislature to ensure that Parks Capital was at $200 million, that arts funding was robust, and that it focused on communities of color, ensuring that their voices are the ones that continue to not be left behind. And again, grateful to Chair Solages and all of my colleagues for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Next, we have Assemblymember Jessica Gonzalez-Rojas.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chairwoman. It's an exciting day when we can announce that one of our big priorities in the BPHA budget was to ensure that every single child in New York State, 2.7 million children across the state, can now have access to free healthy breakfast and free healthy lunch in school. It is our communities that have been crying for this. It's something that has impacted communities of color across the state that have struggled to ensure that there's food on the table. And when children go to school, we know that's not just often a place of learning, but it's a place of care and love. And we cannot feed a hungry child. I mean, you cannot teach a hungry child. You can feed a hungry child. You cannot teach a hungry child. And we know that children have often struggled with academics, with their behavior, with the social connections in school because they were hungry. We work with social workers in the schools. Oftentimes they tell me that when a child ends up in their office because of behavioral issues, because of academic challenges, the first question they ask them is, have you eaten today? And more often than not, the answer is no. So we are advancing something so incredible to address hunger, to address poverty, to address the wellness of our children. Chair Hevesi, the chair of the Committee on Children and Families, often say, when you don't invest in children, you don't invest in New York State, and you don't invest in our future. Well, here we stand united to say we are investing in our children, we're investing in New York State, and we are investing in our future with universal school meals. So thank you so much for the leadership, partnership. I got to go out to Long Island and stay with the chairwoman at one of her schools where we championed this bill. We went across the state to champion this bill, and I'm really ever grateful for the support and advocacy of the Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian Caucus to get this done. Woo!
Thank you. Next, we're going to have Senator Cooney.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. Thank you. Good morning. The chairwoman talked about this being a movement. Well, let's talk about moving New Yorkers from upstate to downstate, and we delivered big for transportation in this budget. So we talk a lot about the quality and the safety of our roads and bridges. $100 million more over the next 2 years in the CHIPS program, which allows us to repair those roads and bridges. And we talk about potholes. I know Assemblymember Meeks and I represent Rochester. We got a lot of potholes in upstate New York. I'm sure all across the state, we've got the money in the budget to do work on that. We also want to talk about moving people. Transportation is not just about moving from A to B, it's about equity. Everyone has the opportunity through public transportation to get to their destination, to get to a hospital appointment, to get to a workforce, to drop off their children at childcare, to pick up their kids from school. We want to make sure whether you are upstate or whether you are downstate, we keep you moving. We fully funded the MTA's capital plan, which needed to be done, long overdue, and a big win for all New Yorkers, not just in New York City, but across New York State. We also put $50 million more into upstate transportation systems in Buffalo and Rochester and Syracuse and Utica and Rome and Albany, so that wherever you are in New York, we're going to keep you moving. Now, we are also thinking bigger. You know I'm going to say this. We did, for the first time since 2006, a state investment in high-speed rail. We got $500,000 to do a study looking at the thruway corridor as a possible way to get people from Buffalo and Western New York all the way down to New York City. Again, opening up our entire state to all New Yorkers. Moving away from transportation for just a moment, let me just do a pride point. This caucus has worked very hard on issues around children. We just heard about that. And we want to make sure that our starting off our children, not only with full bellies, but also with full minds. And we do that by working more than 9 to 5 and by investing in Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. And while we wanted to get a little bit more, we are expanding our program with a $1 million investment so that children in New York State will get free children's books mailed to their homes, upstate and downstate, before they even enter school, so they have that vocabulary, they have that preparation, so when they come with literacy into the classroom, they are more likely to graduate from our high schools across the state. So we're going to keep pushing on that more, but I'm so grateful for this entire caucus for working with us to get that done. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So let's keep moving. Assemblymember Meeks.
Thank you. I am Assemblyman Demond Meeks, representing the 137th Assembly District. I first want to say to the communities across New York that elections have consequences. And I want to say thank each and every one of you for voting in your communities and sending the most diverse legislature ever in history to New York State. It's not by happenstance that we stand here as such a diverse caucus and we're able to move a number of agendas. We have more women, more mothers in this body than ever before in history. And with that, we see legislation that relate to our families, to our communities, pass and go full throttle forward. So again, thank each and every one of you for your service, and to the communities, thank you for voting for these individuals. I want to touch base on the CTE, Career Technology Education. Very important, much needed. For decades on, we've been saying all of our children are not going to college, and we have a responsibility to make sure that they can be successful in their own career paths. So the legislature this year voted for an additional $59 million to expand academic improvement and career education services aid to also include ninth graders. So it wouldn't be a thing of just 10th, 11th, 12th. We want to introduce them to potential career tracks as early as the ninth grade. And we know and we believe that this would give them a skill set that could change their trajectory as well as the trajectory for future members of their family for generations to come. We also, been from the Rochester community, recognize challenges with food insecurity across our state. Again, we fought and we secured millions of dollars for Double Up food bucks. This is funding for individuals who receive SNAP benefits, where they can go to their local farmer markets, as well as some grocery stores in our communities that have committed to matching a dollar for dollar match on healthy foods, such as frozen produce and fresh produce as well. So we're going to continue to do this work in advocacy together to the betterment of all New Yorkers. And we recognize the challenges that we have in our own communities, and we are committed to improving our communities as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next is Senator Fernandez.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you so much to this caucus for their hard work, their attention, their dedication, and love for our districts to produce a budget that, for the most part, was successful. I chair the Committee of Alcoholism and Substance Use Disorder, so my focus was making sure that we didn't lose any dollar in the budget for OASIS and all services related. And thankfully, there was no difference in the budget. So I consider that a win. And it is a win because we've gotten recent information that shows that overdoses are going down in New York State, which is an amazing positive. But we still see discrepancies in our communities, especially Black and brown and diverse communities. So the work does continue. And a big success in this budget was the transparency language that we had included to make sure that there is a clear tracking system as to where every dollar from the settlement funds are going. At this moment, before what we did, dollars were going to counties so they can utilize for harm reduction services, for transportation needs, for various needs that the opioid settlement fund had directed. And with those dollars untracked, there was a concern that they were being used for things that don't work, things that does not work. So that transparency will now create the mechanism that any dollar spent must be reported to OASIS, so we know that we are utilizing those funds that were so hard fought to services that really work and save lives. And as mentioned before, we prevented harm in this budget. In the original proposal regarding opioid safety and the Office of OASIS, there was proposals to add schedulings to the different chemical compounds that exist that we find in fentanyl, in different mixes out there. And these chemical compounds are already scheduled on the federal level. So why are we doubling down on something that is hurting our community? We pushed against it and we succeeded in getting those scheduling removed because what we have seen is that scheduling does not reduce death. Scheduling only increases jail time. Scheduling entices drug dealers and creators to create new chemical compounds that they will sell that is not technically on their scheduling list. So we prevented a lot of harm by not allowing that scheduling to happen and making sure that the focus stayed in keeping dollars into the services that keep people alive. So I'm grateful again for this caucus that has fought so hard with me and for many of the successes, in particular too, a big component of anyone's well-being when in the struggle of addiction or getting into recovery is stable housing. And the fact that we got HABP a proposal in the budget to start those vouchers is going to bring people into homes so they can live healthy and safe lives. And I'm especially happy for that. So thank you so much again, and I'm done.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have Assemblymember Torres.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to every member of this caucus for their steadfast leadership in making sure that this is a budget this year that represents all of the voices of our communities. My name is Assemblymember Emerita Torres. I'm proud to represent the South Bronx, District 85. We make critical gains in this budget, including in housing and in technology. I'm a proud member of the Mom Squad, so I'm really proud of all the wins that we got there. I'm going to talk particularly about housing and technology. So Michelamas are critical across the state, across the city. We secured $80 million to preserve and expand Michelama housing, protecting deeply affordable homes that working families rely on. The shelter tax reduction was critical when it comes to Michelamas as well. We want a key change to this by lowering the shelter rent cap from 10% to 5%. Taxes are going up across the state. This is a big win to make sure that we have secure, stable housing for our communities. AI and technology.
Look, our communities need to have access and resources to the rapidly developing and changing landscape of artificial intelligence and technology. We have AI funding in our schools. Our caucus made sure that the budget included $5 million to bring AI education into our schools. We have broadband expansion. We secured $220 million in investments to expand broadband access across the state, especially in rural and underserved communities. I also want to highlight a major consumer protection win. New York is now the first state in the country to require companies to tell you when they're using algorithms to set prices. This is really important because otherwise you don't know, when you walk into a physical store, you get a price. When you walk online, when you go online, that price is not set. Algorithms are setting those prices. So now you're going to know when they set prices for you. Finally, I want to say, and I want to thank Chairman of Transportation, Jeremy Cooney, and also Chairman Magnarelli for investments for a revisioning study for the Cross Bronx Expressway. If you know the Bronx, you know the hundreds of trucks that crisscross our borough every day. We finally are going to have $35 million to re-envision what the Cross Bronx looks like, including a capping study to really take a look at how we can make it green, how we can stop some of the trucks that are crisscrossing our borough. So thank you very much again to the chair, to the caucus for all of the hard work. I'm really proud to be a part of this caucus. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember. Next, we're going to have Senator Brew.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank, first of all, our Chair Solages for her really tireless leadership in keeping a very diverse group of legislators in this caucus on point and also on topic so that we can be here to celebrate some of the wins. You know, I think many of my colleagues mentioned this budget is far from a slam dunk. There were, as Senator Fernandez said, a number of things that we as legislators had to fight back on, had to stand up for our communities. And in particular, as the chair of the Mental Health Committee, we had a very long, steep road in front of us of how to ensure that this budget, again, I'll use the words of my colleague, Senator Fernandez, did more good than it did harm. And so I want to take this moment of privilege to really deeply thank all of my colleagues who are standing here today and all of our colleagues in the caucus who really stood together and spoke as a chorus around what we needed to see for New Yorkers when it comes to how to help them in mental health crisis. We would not have gotten the things we got in this budget had it not been for really truly the moral compass of this caucus. So again, I want to thank our chair and everyone in this caucus. Yeah. So, you know, we had some incredible wins when it came to mental health. Again, because of a lot of the leadership of this caucus, we made really the first major stride forward of implementing Daniel's Law statewide in New York State. This is the first time that in a budget we have made a multi-million-dollar investment in Daniel's Law mental health crisis response teams across New York State. Not only that, but this budget has taken two key components from the legislation itself to begin building the infrastructure to make sure that New York State does indeed become the first state in the United States of America with a statewide mental health crisis response system. This budget includes $2 million to fund the Behavioral Health Crisis Technical Assistance Center, a recommendation that came out directly from the Daniel's Law Task Force that was funded in a previous budget. This assistance center will exist to help localities all across the state to build up their own mental health response teams and ensure they are in line with the recommendations of the task force. But not only that, we have secured an unprecedented $6 million to go towards pilot programs, either new or existing programs that are in line with the Daniel's Law legislation. That means the state is finally putting our money where our mouth is and putting money towards localities who are choosing to step into the 21st century by building these mental health response units. I cannot thank my colleagues enough, but I also need to thank all of the advocates across the state. I, of course, want to thank the Prude family, because this is not done in vain. It is done in the legacy of Daniel Prude and the entire Rochester community, who continues to feel the pain and loss of what happened on that dreadful night in March of 2020. So we did not get everything, but these are major steps forward. And as I am calling it, the silver lining of this mental health budget is these investments in Daniel's Law. So thank you again to all of my colleagues.
Thank you. Next, we have Assemblymember Tadler Waterman.
Good morning. New York State Assemblymember Monique Chandler Waterman, representing in Brooklyn, East Flatbush, parts of Canarsie, Brownsville, and Crown Heights in Assembly District 58. So I want to thank the Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, Asian Caucus, all the members, the leadership with our Chair Solages, and our Speaker Hastings. So we had the last couple of weeks in Albany with a fight and a fight and a fight and a fight. But we are here standing 10 toes down on what for equity and making sure justice prevails. So I want to make sure that we highlight we talked about a lot of childcare investments. We talked about mental health. And to build on that, the New York State Office of Gun Violence Prevention, for the very first time, we have secured it and made it a permanent office within the state statute. These efforts going to make sure not only that it's permanent, because we see what happened on the federal level where the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention was shut down. This office will help guide in coordination with agencies, stakeholders, making sure there's recommendations. What's happening in your neighborhood? How do you lend your voice to reduce gun violence? Making sure there's public education campaigns, and training. Make sure grant funds are going to the organizations on the ground doing this important work. And making sure there's data collection. How do we measure what's happening? Hospital intervention programs and wraparound service, inclusive of mental health, as we heard from our Senator Sam Brook. And we want to make sure that we are informed on how we holistically deal with this public health crisis. We even codified a new term called mass gun violence. 3 or more people injured in one shooting incident is mass gun violence. 3 or more people injured in multiple related shooting incidents within 7 days, mass gun violence. And then we just had the term 4 or more being injured, 4 or more being murdered is mass shooting. So these are some of the things, the wins. But one shooting is way too much. This is the reality for most community members, unfortunately. However, we need to make sure our victims are supported. So with the collective voices of our survivors, our legislators, our stakeholders, we now have moved the statutory cap from $6,000 to $12,000 when it comes to burial services. And to build on that, when it's a victim, there's a survivor, there's gun violence, there's mental health service needed. So I'm proud of what was done with Daniel's Law pilot programs, but also to make sure that this discharge planning, we need to make sure that we do more when it comes to under 72 hours when someone is released and discharged. There needs to be a plan for that. But what we do have is within a week to ensure that patients has an appointment to set up for post-discharge treatment. We need to ensure that families and supportive teams are included and know when their loved one is being discharged. All these collaborative efforts help bolster the older adults' needs, the youth needs, our family needs, our whole entire New York State, making sure that we are prioritizing to make sure that is equity and there's justice prevailing. Thank you so much. I'm New York State Assemblymember Monique Chandler.
Thank you, Monique, for all that you've done. We appreciate it. Next, we have Assemblymember Hooks.
Good morning. I'm Assemblywoman Hooks from 35th Assembly District, Queens. This legislature did something unprecedented this year. We gave out $30 million to the Asian American Pacific Islander community. We gave $30 million to the Puerto Rican and Hispanic community. And for the first time ever, we gave $30 million to the Black community. This is something that's unprecedented because it is to hit home to those boots on the ground, smaller agencies that are doing work. This is agency in action, which has been our mantra for this section. This is for those smaller communities to be able to get funds and for their communities, which is hard to do for smaller organizations, so that they can continue to do the work that they're doing on the ground. They are our frontline workers, as we call them. And this is what our way of giving back to them, to say, we see you, we support you in doing the most important work to the most important communities that we serve. Also, we gave $10 million for the reentry initiatives. This is to help individuals who return home after they've been rehabilitated, to be able to get services so they do not have to go back to where they came from. This is where we are saying, we are here to help you. We are help you to stay strong. We are help you to fight, to make sure that you can come out and stay a productive citizen in the community where you live. So we have done something really, really great with this money that was given out to our most in need communities. And I want to thank the legislator for everyone making sure that this happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Assemblymember Cruz.
Good morning. This was a particularly difficult budget because we had to plug many of the holes that were left by the federal government, and every week it was a new piece of a program that was being cut. Every week it was a new set of New Yorkers who were in the verge of being laid off, or actually being laid off because of the changes at the federal level. But in the meantime, under the leadership of our chairwoman, we are very happy to see that maintenance or increase was at the forefront of every single one of the conversations around the money that we needed for our community. We worked on supporting the access to opportunity programs. That means how do you get to college and how do you stay in college? Everything from the HEAL program that has been so good for so many of the members here were beneficiaries of the HEAL program for SUNY, as well as programs like the Science and Technology Entry Program and the Collegiate Science and Technology Entry Program and the Liberty and Partnership Entry Program. Those are all initiatives that the state has funded to almost $10 million to make sure you get into college, you stay in college, and you graduate, and you can go into industries that many folks like us never even thought of, like technology. Additionally, and this is why I mentioned the cuts at the federal level. Earlier this year, we saw the federal government cut funding from immigrant legal services for children who can not go to court on their own and represent themselves. And now they had to. In some of the most basic humanitarian legal services that would be needed for these kids to be protected, we stood up and said, we are going to maintain our funding. We were seeking more money, and we're going to come back next year because we need more money. But at the very least, while we were working on one hand to supplement the deficit left by the federal government, with the other hand, we said, no, we are going to maintain, and we got $65 million to make sure folks can get the legal services they need, immigrant communities to have their constitutional rights protected and be able to at least have a chance to stay in the country they call home. We are going to continue the fight. There's much more to do, like making sure we get New York for All, that I know the caucus supports, but that's not where the fight ends. We have about 3.5 years left and counting of making sure we continue to support New Yorkers while the federal government turns their back on us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember. Assemblymember Valdez.
Good morning. My name is Claire Valdez. I represent District 37 in Queens, and today I wanted to celebrate a really big win on our budget, which is the paying down of our unemployment insurance debt in New York State. We invested over $6 billion to make our unemployment insurance fund solvent again, and what that means is that our workers who are facing unemployment during a really volatile moment in our country could receive, instead of a maximum of $504 a week, which is well below poverty wages in New York State, a maximum of $869 a week. It's the first increase in unemployment insurance benefits since 2019. It's made possible because we were able to make our fund solvent again. As my colleague just said, we have a federal administration that seems very dead set on upending New Yorkers' lives at every possible turn, defunding our agencies and institutions, and the workers who are caught in the crossfires of those cuts are going to be needing these benefits very, very much in a very dire moment in their lives. So I'm very glad we could increase that benefit. The work now remains to make sure that our fund remains solvent in the long term and that we can give even more workers the benefits they need when they are out of work, have been laid off, have been terminated, and really need to remain, need to keep paying their bills, paying their rent, and survive in New York State. So thank you. I'm grateful to our caucus, grateful to Chair Harry Bronson, who really led on that fight. We're showing that New York State stands with our workers. Thank you very much.
And we're going to end where it all begins in Albany with Assemblymember Romero.
Thank you. So I'm here to talk a little bit about one of the most controversial topics that we ate up about the first few weeks of our budget, which is discovery. And I'm so proud to say that in this budget, we reaffirm New York's commitment to due process, and we actually preserved the reforms of 2020. And we reaffirmed our commitment to the integrity of the 2020 reforms, which were actually born from tragedy. The 2020 reforms were passed to ensure fairness, transparency, and justice, to ensure that we prevented the tragedy of Khalif Browder and make sure that the intensity of that happened to Khalif Browder would never happen again. And the reforms that happened in 2020 were about racial justice too, because Black and brown New Yorkers were jailed, wrongfully incarcerated, and intensely prosecuted by the criminal legal system more than anyone else. So when we passed this budget and when we were looking at discovery reform, it was a knockout, intense, and very long fight. And it was a fight that was fought by the caucus. And I'm so proud that we are here and that we passed a budget that preserved the integrity of the 2020 reforms. And it was a fight that was worth fighting for. And the amendments that we passed protected that spirit, and they still require prosecutors to turn over all evidence. They still require prosecutors to give over misconduct records for police. It still, allows for that misconduct records to be discoverable. And speedy trial rights, most importantly, are still tied to discovery. And those were all things that in the beginning of this budget, some proposals wanted to disintegrate. And I am so proud to be here today to say that all of those things are still a part of our discovery laws and are still a part of any type of criminal case going forward. And as a former public defender, that means so much to me. And as a current legislator, that means so much to me, because that was what I was fighting for in conference. That was everyone behind me was fighting for in conference. And it means so much to be a legislator and as someone that's practicing and creating laws. We preserved those 2020 reforms, and we will continue to preserve those 2020 reforms every single day and every single year going forward, because that means so much to us as caucus members. So in the face of political pressure, we as the caucus stood firm. We said no. We said we stand for justice, and we stand for the integrity of the criminal legal system. And I want everyone here watching to know that that is what we stand for, and we will continue to stand for that every single day and every single year going forward.
Thank you. All right, excellent. So with that, I appreciate it. Any questions? I see Marie French there. No question?
If you guys want to talk about, we're going to start on the packaging, plastics and packaging.
Yeah. We'll talk off topic. Yeah. All right. Thank you.